Hey, everybody. It's Tony George and Arun Shiva from DocSports.com. Wild Card Weekend. Right there, Arun. I gotta bring it out for the playoffs right there. Forget the shirt and tie. My boys are resting back in Kansas City this weekend, getting ready to take on somebody, and it's gonna be a crazy game here this upcoming weekend. Nonetheless, and of course, I believe before we get to the games, I believe that your Falcons have already or have requested to talk to one of my co-offensive coordinators and Eric Bieniemy down there in Atlanta. I know you're down in that area and you're a big Atlanta fan. What have you heard so far on the coaching search?
Yeah, I mean they're obviously talking to Bieniemy. It should be interesting. I mean, you know about the Indianapolis Colts. As far as their defensive coordinator as well. One of the most interesting names that I heard was Joe Brady, the Carolina Panthers offensive coordinator.
Whoa.
And what a meteoric rise for him, being the LSU offensive coordinator, leading them to a title. Then following to Matt Rule. Remember, they didn't have anybody but McCaffrey, really, and Bridgewater.
Right.
McCaffrey was out for the first few weeks. He did a great job with those young players. Imagine if he actually gets a decent offense. And he would end up being the youngest coach, I think. I think he'll be slightly younger than McVay. Can you imagine 32-year-olds getting NFL coaching jobs? What has the world come to? It used to be like you got to be a minimum of 50,
Yeah.
And now age works against you, and the younger you are, they think they can't. The younger you are, they think people can't catch up to your system. And people didn't catch up to Joe Brady's system. LSU, he defeated Nick Saban after all, didn't he? And I'm a huge Alabama fan. And now they're just wondering. They're just like, he went to, eventually they'll catch up to you, like they caught up to McVay. The only coach really that no one has ever caught up to is Andy Reid.
Yeah.
They caught up to Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick's offense is whatever now, but no one has ever caught up to Andy Reid. He's been good every year.
Yeah, he has been, and he's had a host of good quarterbacks over his career as well. Andy Reid's been very fortunate, going back, Donovan McNabb, the glory days back in Philadelphia. And, of course, some good quarterbacks there in Kansas City with Alex Smith and of course, Patrick Mahomes, maybe one of the best there is, but in the league right now. Obviously, he's getting paid more than anybody else. But it's interesting that I bring up Alex Smith because that segues into my game here on the most intriguing game. And folks, there's only 6 games this weekend. And last time I checked, Arun and I do offer advice for a small amount of money for a living. So we don't want to give away every game here on the show. But a couple of things of note, and this ties in together. When you look at trends in the wild cards, last year the over and unders was a perfect 4-0 on the under in the wild card games, and the year before 3-1 on the unders. Now this year we have 6 games over the wild card weekend and not 4 because of the new playoff format. But it's going to be real interesting to see how that pans out here. We don't have a lot of high totals Saturday or Sunday. Only 2 totals out of the 4 games have eclipsed the 50-point mark. But nonetheless, taking a look at this Tampa and Washington game, the better defense is getting 8.5 points here, Arun. And one thing that I'm concerned about here, and I wrote this down, and I got this from a newsletter I get every week. I'm not going to give credit to the newsletter, but I will tell you I'm reading it verbatim. 7 teams have made the playoffs since 2002 with an 8-8 record or worse. You know what? Do you know what those? It's setting your ringer off. By the way, this particular stat, but those 7 teams made the playoffs with an 8-8 record or worse are a perfect 7-0 against the spread. And here's a shocker: 6-1 straight up by an average win margin of 6.6 points per game. That is an unbelievable stat. And bear in mind that the Washington Redskins, with Alex Smith at quarterback, are 5-1 straight up. Also, Washington has held their last 7 straight opponents to 20 points or less, Arun. Now, obviously, they started out with a bad quarterback who's now been cut from the team to open up the season. They've had some injury issues this year, this, that, and the other, a new coaching change. They did win the worst division in football, but do we just crap can these guys to the curb against Tom Brady and the Bucs, or looks like they might want to make a game of this?
Yeah, I mean, so I had this line around 9, and it came around 8.5, which makes sense. I'm interested in the total. I like the under, and it might make my card. It might not. I don't know yet. But the only way Washington keeps this game close is through the under. And I mean, what a screw job by Peterson, right? I mean, unbelievable, man. Yeah. Unbelievable. I mean, what you're trying to do, like, it's such a screw job. It's like, because he hates Joe Judge. So he's like, if I'm not going to the playoffs, neither are you, kind of mentality. Yeah. And they're like, oh, we want to see what we can get out of Sudfeld. What, in week 17, you want to see how you're going to get out of him? I mean, on week 17, the last quarter of the game in a competitive game on national television, you're going to see what you're going to get out of Sudfeld. It's Sudfeld, man. What are you going to get out of him? Like, this was a total screw job. And it's because basically Peterson does not like Joe Judge because he's from Bill Belichick's coaching tree and he's an ass. Okay, like most guys who came from Bill Belichick's coaching tree. Not a lot of people like Josh McDaniels because he's a jerk too. Ron Rivera is a nice guy. He's a good gentleman. And this was more Peterson like, here, you go to the playoffs. That's all this was, okay? And but I like the under. Brady struggles against strong defensive lines. We've talked about it. And I think that they're going to get after him. I think they're going to make him feel uncomfortable. And I think that if you're Washington, what do? You just run the ball a lot and you keep Tom Brady off the field, right? And they certainly have the running backs to do it. Alex Smith is a game manager. I see a lot of 7-minute drives. They're going to try to milk the clock, keep him off the field. And I thought if the total came out below, around 46, 47, I was definitely going to take the under. I'm glad I didn't see a total come out at 50 because then they would have expected to be high scoring. So I do expect it to be low scoring. I like the under.
In these low-scoring games, you got to take a look. There's going to be some low-scoring games here this weekend, I think. But one of them that might not be, and maybe the most intriguing game to me on Saturday, is going to be Buffalo and Indianapolis. Buffalo has done nothing but just impress and get better each and every week. Both teams, Frank Reich, McDermott, these guys are some of the top 4 or 5 coaches in the league. You can have that argument all day long. They're definitely top 5 coaches. This game's very intriguing to me here. 6.5 points seems to be quite a few for against what is perceived to be a good Colts defense. Your thoughts on this game? Because this one here, we're taping this on Wednesday at 2:00 in the afternoon, Vegas time. I'm still kind of scratching my head on this one, Arun.
So it is really difficult to go against Buffalo at this point. I mean, they seem to be a team that is on an absolute mission. Right? Because if this team was going to have a letdown, you would have thought they would have had a letdown any one of these last few weeks, right? Like maybe they don't get up for Miami. That line was just 2. It was like 2.5 type of thing, and they destroyed them, man. And there's no reason for them to put up 56 points, but they did. There's no reason for them to put up 38 on New England. They didn't have to do that, but they did. They have literally covered, 8 in a row at this point. They have scored. Obviously, Josh Allen wants the MVP. That is what this is about. He wants to put up a ton of points, stats. He wants the MVP. 27, 34, 26, 48. They didn't have to be Denver 48-19. It's Denver. Like you could win that game, 34-19. Why didn't you just score 2 more times? He's trying to get the MVP. This team is super motivated. And I like Indianapolis and their defense. I mean, in general, and to not take anything away from them, they have won 4 out of the last 5. But who have they played? They lost to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and the Steelers suck. Okay? They lost to the Steelers by 4. They beat Jacksonville by 14. Fine. They beat Houston. Houston sucks. They beat Vegas. Vegas sucks. They beat Houston. Houston sucks. And then Tennessee, they lost to them. They did beat Green Bay, but Green Bay had a chance to win that. It's a lot of Houston and Jacksonville. You know what I mean? It's just a lot of Houston, Jacksonville back and forth. So I don't know if you can trust them. And I know the Colts are going to play their hearts out and they're going to play well, blah, blah, blah. But this team lost to the Ravens by 14. I'd look at the Buffalo Bills as a Ravens-type team with a better offense. I think you either go Bills or you stay away is my guess.
Yeah, Bills you might want to find one you like this weekend and tease them down, get them down around a half. They're 6.5. They were sitting at 7. You know, it's interesting. Frank Reich should have some fond memories of playoff games in Buffalo. About 28 ago, the biggest comeback in NFL history was orchestrated by him as a quarterback for the Bills. So a little bit of history here as well. It's interesting. Indianapolis has been favored 15 out of 16 games this year. And the only game they weren't favored, they were a 1-point underdog against Cleveland here. It's going to be real interesting, Arun, to see how they play in the underdog role here.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you. It looks too easy. So I'm actually going to stay away from this game entirely. I just don't know, because Frank Reich is a great coach. And if you're Buffalo and you just drop 50-plus points, I mean, isn't that a kind of a throw to gauntlet challenge for the Colts? And the Colts did beat the Packers. But the Packers also have no defensive pressure. That's the weak point of the Packers. I think they've sacked the quarterback one of the fewest amount of times in general. Like they don't get any defensive pressure on the quarterback. So, I mean, it's hard for me to get a beat on this game. I have a much better beat on the Tampa Bay game. I like the under there. But this one is like, you know.
Yeah, in Seattle and the Los Angeles Rams, I'm going to have a sizable play in that one, so I'm going to leave that one alone. Let's switch gears to Sunday. First of all, before we do that, you'll notice above our heads here a free $60 button. Be sure and click the link in the description below. Get over to Doc Sports this weekend. We're starting out with our golf program this week over on my side on the Tony George page. Absolutely crushing it, and having an epic start to the NBA season. So be sure and check that out as well. College basketball steadied itself a little bit and having a good solid week this week. So there's a lot of opportunities over there, not only from myself and Arun, but 10 other great handicappers and a ton of free information, videos, the free plays on them there, great handicapping angles and techniques. And that website at docsports.com is geared to help you make better decisions without having to pay a penny. So be sure and get over there and check it out. And if you've never been a member, take advantage of the free $60 and get hooked up this weekend. And by the way, there's a national title game on Monday that all the handicappers will have out on Thursday. And I'll try and stick a few prop bets in there as well. So be sure and get over to the website and check it out. On Sunday, I think the most intriguing game here, and wait, before we get to that, since we were talking about these teams that were 8-8 or worse, and they're 7-0 against the spread, 6-1 straight up, well, guess what that brings into play here, Arun? The Chicago Bears catching 9.5. Let me pull the line up here. I thought I saw a 10. I'm seeing a 10 right now at William Hill here in Las Vegas. So, while we think Washington might fall into that category somewhat, and you're kind of leaving that side play alone, I'm not afraid that Brady's always struggled against that team struggled against good defenses this year, and there's no doubt Washington has one. And the Bears have a good defense here. Now we're getting 10 at one spot, and a couple of 10s on the globals, I might add as well, Arun. Chicago, let me ask you this question. Who has the better chance that has an 8-8 record or worse this weekend to cover a number between these two, Washington or Chicago?
That's a great question. And I would say Chicago. And I know the obvious answer. Yeah, and I know the obvious answer might be Washington, but I would say Chicago because I don't think Drew Brees is that good anymore. He's been really suspect lately, especially in the playoffs. I know they beat Carolina 33-7 and Minnesota 52-33, which is great. But there's something about this Bears team. It's hard to get up for the Bears. It's just you don't really take Mitchell Trubisky seriously, so it's hard to get up for the Bears. And I think and the other thing is Tampa Bay is Brady wants to prove a point. You know what I mean? And it's his first playoff game in Tampa Bay. He knows his window is limited and blah, blah, blah. And you can say that about Breeze too. But I like the fact the Bears come off that 16-35 loss against the Packers. And I think the Bears and I think Nagy is a really good coach. I just have this hunch that Chicago is going to show up again because no one – do you expect Washington to put up a fight against Tampa Bay, but do you really expect Chicago to put up a fight against St. New Orleans? No. And I think that and playoffs are full of surprises, and I just have this hunch that Trubisky is going to play somewhat pretty well. The Saints are going to win by like 4 points. The Saints are the biggest disappointment in the playoffs of late, always. You know what I mean? So many times they've lost to teams that they shouldn't lose to. And I think the Bucs know what they're getting against Washington. They know they're good. You know what I mean? So I don't think the Bucs will take them lightly. The Saints, I don't know if they'll take Chicago seriously or not.
Well, it's going to be – I think it's going to be an interesting game. I think the total's sitting there right now at 40 – it's 50 – no, wait a minute. 47, opened up at 48. New Orleans has got a good defense. I think Trubisky will struggle against a good defense there. I think, if anything, you might want to take a sniff the under in that one. One game that intrigues me, obviously your thoughts quickly, and we really don't need to talk a lot about it. Your thoughts on Pittsburgh-Cleveland. How would you like to beat Cleveland and never – how long has it been since they've been in the playoffs? Well, how many every year? 18 or whatever it was. And then they finally get there, and they have this COVID issue, players missing, coaches missing, playing the team they played last week. And obviously Pittsburgh kept it very close to the vest, didn't try anything too fancy. Roethlisberger sat out, got himself some rest at his tender age, which is much needed, and maybe some bumps and bruises get healed up a little bit. You know what? If I was going to lay a number this weekend on any one of these teams, my first go-to would be Pittsburgh. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting to me is, by the way, I also agree with you. I think the Bears and Saints has a good shot at going under. More than the side, I like the under in that game. Just because I think Breeze will lay an egg. And they can still win with him laying an egg, but I think he lays an egg. As far as Cleveland, Pittsburgh.
Excuse me, can I interrupt you a minute? Spoken like a true Falcons fan.
Of course. Of course. I'll admit, I'm partial. I'm very partial because the Saints always beat.
I know you are.
I'm partial. So as far as Cleveland and Pittsburgh, I like the over there just because I think Cleveland – I think Cleveland's going to put forth a really good effort, regardless of who plays. I think you know how I feel about adversity-facing teams. They have a tendency to rise up. And I just don't think Pittsburgh is that good. I think if Pittsburgh, I'm not completely sold on Pittsburgh. And they beat a lot of teams that were like so-so. And remember, the Washington Redskins beat them. And Cleveland, when they want to play really good defense on the front line, I think they do a good job. I don't think Tomlin is highly creative. And I think Stefanski is creative enough. Who's done the better coaching job, Tony? Stefanski or Tomlin? Stefanski, in my opinion. Tomlin's had a good year, but Stefanski took a team that hasn't gone to the playoffs. That was just a mess. Just a mess. And he took over this team. He's led them pretty well. They've done a nice job bringing along Baker. And, if the Steelers are truly good, okay, they lost to Washington 17-23. Then they lose to the Bills 15-26. Then they lose to the Bengals 17-27. They beat the Colts, and then they lose to the Browns. Of course, they had their backup in, but they have lost 4 out of their last 5. And you're getting 6 points with Cleveland here. And it's hard to go against the Steelers in the playoffs too, because they always seem to show up in the playoffs too. The thing is that I like about the Browns is they only lost by 5 to the Ravens. The Browns have not been blown out by anybody, really. They did beat Houston and Philly and Jacksonville, Tennessee, but you know how I feel about the AFC South. It's just garbage. They beat the Giants 20-6. It's tough to get a lean on this game, but believe it or not, I like the over in this game. I think Ben is going to be rested. I think the Browns are going to surprise, and they'll be really focused on offense. And I can see this game going over. I don't see this as a traditional AFC North bruise fest. I see scoring.
Right. Well, and the Pittsburgh defense has not played well. And the Pittsburgh defense, Dupree's out. They're missing 3 starters, including a good safety. I'm telling you right now, Cleveland's going to score in this game. Cleveland is going to score points in this game. And Cleveland didn't show their hand last week either. They knew they were, they didn't show everything they had. The one thing, that their head coach who's not going to be able to coach this game, which is too bad, he's basically taken the same team that Kitchens had and made him a playoff team this year and a real contender. That tells you how good of a coach he is. And he's obviously up for Coach of the Year honors, and he should be. The Cleveland Browns have been a doormat of the NFL for I don't know how long. Them and the Detroit Lions are having a race. I think the Lions are winning that race, but obviously. But nonetheless, one other game here that we're going to let everybody go. Just an interesting game here. Baltimore, Tennessee is going to be the best game of the weekend, in my opinion. Maybe Buffalo, Indianapolis, but definitely the game of the day on Sunday is Baltimore, Tennessee. And Baltimore's laying 3, total 55 points. Interesting game, to say the least. Baltimore coming in here a little hot. I mean, I didn't get all worked up about Baltimore because they beat the hell out of, Cincinnati who doesn't have a quarterback. I mean, give me a break. I mean, anybody with, blind eye can see that. But interesting ball game here, to say the least, Arun.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you my 2 leans. I like Baltimore and I like the over. Because I like Baltimore because they gave up 3 to Cincinnati, 13 to the Giants, 14 to the Jaguars, and 17 to Dallas, and 19 to Pittsburgh. And I know it's like they're not all of those are sub 500 teams, but I will say this. They were focused. They didn't have any letdowns. They were focused. They remained focused. Even when they're blowing them out, they still kept them within under 20 points. They always remained focused the whole way through. Whereas the Titans have one of the worst pass rushes in the league. They might be dead last. I read a stat the other day. The Titans had sacked the quarterback like 3 times lately over the last few weeks. They just don't get after the quarterback. And if you can't get after Lamar, you're going to have some serious issues. Now, what the Titans do have going for them is they always show up in the playoffs. Remember, they beat the Patriots on the road, and they have Derrick Henry, which obviously gives you an edge. So, and they never quit, and they never but having said that, this team lost to Green Bay 14-40, right? So there is a way that they can lose. They gave up 38 to Houston in a game maybe they shouldn't have won. So when you put that together, I think they did beat Baltimore as well, November 22nd, 30-24 in overtime. So I think the Ravens have a little revenge. I think that Baltimore is definitely going to score. And I think Tennessee's defense is porous. But I also see Tennessee getting behind early, and then they staunch a huge comeback, and it's going to push it over.
Well, there you go, folks. That wraps it up. I mean, we just got it short and sweet for you today. Arun giving out a lot more picks than I did. But that's him.
But you set the tone.
He's a generous guy.
Well, no, you set the tone, man. You set the tone about you lay out the game really well. So it's easy to discuss it after you set the tone. So.
Well, that's because, of my, skill and charisma and charm and, just a big, heavy skill set of setting you up so you could tee off. But nonetheless, ladies, you got anything going on? What do you got going on this weekend, Arun? Anything big? And, of course, oh, by the way, shoot, I almost forgot to mention, Alabama Crimson Tide fan in the house right now. So you got to be fired up about Monday. Without giving it away, but you got to be excited about the matchup, and I think Ohio State surprised a lot of people last weekend.
Yeah, I mean they had revenge on Clemson. They've been waiting a whole year, and it just makes the University of Georgia look like a bunch of numbnuts. I mean, you had Justin Fields, and you went with a good old boy network, and we've talked about on the show many times that mobile quarterbacks is what gives Nick Saban trouble. Johnny Manziel, Cam Newton, Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence. And Murray is not a mobile quarterback, and neither is Jake Fromm from Buffalo. These aren't mobile quarterbacks, but Justin Fields is a mobile quarterback. He's going to play really well, and I think it's going to be a great game. I'll be rooting on Alabama, obviously. Yeah, I think it's going to be a phenomenal game, and I think that Ohio State is as equipped, probably the most equipped team in the country to give Alabama trouble. So I think it's going to be a good game. I will tell you this. Early thoughts is you see the total at 76-75.
Yeah.
This is the new – I take two things away. I take away that Georgia made a huge mistake in letting Justin Fields go, number one. Number two, this is the new norm of football, high-scoring games. And offenses have definitely defeated defenses in figuring out, bringing the linebackers up and doing all of these play-action type plays, these RPOs. It's changed the game. So it's interesting, though. You notice the line is at 8.5.
Yeah.
Roughly the same as the Clemson line.
All right.
So it's the same exact line with a different team.
Yeah.
So that's it.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's going to be a good game. Let me ask you a question. Just give me the answer. Who's the best quarterback in that game? Jones or Fields?
Fields.
Yeah, there you go. There you go, folks. Spoken like an Alabama Crimson Tide, man. It'll be a great ball game on Monday.
I'll tell you this. Trevor Lawrence isn't a lock for that number one pick anymore after what Justin Fields did.
Yeah. Yeah, and looked to me like with a broken rib. I played a little quarterback in Division II football, and I took a couple of those hits, and I've tried to play with a broken rib. It's almost impossible. But nonetheless, tough kid. Be a hell of a football game. Get in on all the action. They're over at sports.com this weekend. College and pro hoops, and, of course, college and pro football, and some golf thrown in, some soccer. We got NHL right around the corner. So looking forward. Arun and I got WNBA on deck here in the near future as well. We both a bit of that, so be sure to go to the website. Enjoy your wild card weekend. Get over to Docs. Come visit us. Thanks for tuning in.